Okay, welcome back again. So this is a painting I'm working on for tomorrow's class. We already did a seascape and I did a few versions, but I wanted to change things up a bit and see if it works a little better in class. Some students had a problem. We had a big crashing wave with a rock over here and it ran into some issues. So what I'm doing, or what I did, was I painted the sky. I used some liquid white on the sky and just painted a nice, colorful, maybe beginning of a sunset sky with a bright spot there. I added some titanium white right in that spot to make it pop with some brilliance. And I pulled the tape off. I had tape here to create this nice straight line. I pulled that off and now I'm just working the liquid clear up to this edge. This was the brush I used, I believe, to drop some color in here. And I do need a bit more of the Indian yellow. So this was Indian yellow and cad yellow. So let me get a bit more of that mixed into the liquid clear. You'll see how this works in 1 minute. But basically we add these transparent colors, alizarin crimson or phthalo blue and Indian yellow. These are transparent colors, so when you apply them over black like this, you really can't see them. You can see them a little bit, but you can see through them and see more of the black. So I'm just scrubbing in some Indian yellow into this liquid clear, and that gives us a nice base coat of color. And now we're just going to add some white to that to begin creating the water and the waves to the water. So I'll use a fan brush and some titanium white. Let me show you how I load this brush. So I just pick up some titanium white, mostly on the tip. You can see it's mostly on the tip. I call that a French manicure. And I will start back here in the very bright part of our sky that's reflecting down in here, and I will begin laying in some long linear brush strokes with this brush, which will begin to look like some distant waves, some movement, water movement, something like that. Now what's important when you're creating these waves, and if you're in my class I stress this, is that you leave dark, like this dark edge right here. I don't want to kill that edge. I could make it a bit brighter on top of that, and if I do sort of a sweeping or rounded motion, you'll get the shape of a wave. Let's do one here a little bit bigger, something like that. But it's important to leave dark in between each of these. Without that contrast, this will just all look flat. Pick up a bit more paint. Let's come back over here, make this a little brighter. You see how that looks like the water's actually moving. It's not flat, and it does look like waves. So don't forget to bring it all the way back over to this side. Pull this back, allow the value to get darker back there. That will show depth and create a separation between each of these waves. Let's make this brighter, and it should be relatively darker on this edge that comes up to this edge here that comes up to the top of the wave. So that's painted in over the black gesso, which was dry, with a bit of white acrylic paint just to create that line as a guide, mostly for my students. Here, a little more white paint, hair out of there, and use a sweeping motion so it has a bit of a bow to those brush strokes. You don't want them necessarily all straight lines, something like that, and make sure they're random. Okay, that's nice. That's a nice start. We can come back in and do some detail to that wave that's sweeping there. coming in. A swell where the water's moving like this, not so much of a wave. A bit here maybe, a little bright, and we can build on that, right? We can add those as we move along in this composition. I'm just sort of blocking it in. Very pretty. I think I need a bit more here because here's our light source, so let's get that bright right there. Let's come down on this one, pick up some more paint. This is titanium white. Get the tops of these waves really brightened up. You can see what that does. Elongate them. That's cool. That's looking good, right? Back here, shorter, smaller, thinner lines because it's further back in the distance. That pretty. Be a bit right there. Okay, that's a good start. One more. I'm having too much fun. One more. Let's do this one here. Let's do two more. And let's do a little highlight on that wave as it goes back over there. Okay, that's a nice start. You can see those waves moving in. I like that. Now let's build on this foreground wave. I'll use my same fan brush. Maybe wipe it off because I've picked up some of that yellow and that undercolor, and I want this white to be fairly brilliant to start with. You know, so we're going to have this coming over, this wave turning over here. So I want to lighten this up here, create kind of a glow that's reflecting off the sky, but I don't want it to be a pure yellow. Maybe a sort of a greenish yellow. So I picked up a little bit of sap green that I had on my palette with some yellow, and I'm just going to scrub this in. So this white line here is the top of this wave. So I'm going to bring a little bit of this color in. There we go. A little bit more on the blue side. So I added in some mountain mix color that I had on my palette, which is sort of a gray blue, and that's going to go into that wave there, here, all the way over. You can see I'm scrubbing that in good. I'd like to get a little blue into that wave, so I'm picking up some phthalo blue and scrubbing that right over the top just to get sort of a greenish blue going there. I like that. Maybe I can get some of this greenish blue back in here too, just here and there. Get it now. Scrub it in so it blends. We don't want to see any hard lines. And this again will harmonize this front wave with the more distant back waves. You can see how that works nicely to bring all of these colors together. We don't want to alienate any one area of this painting by using a color that's not used somewhere else. It's always nice to carry those colors into other areas of the composition. And we can come back in if we killed some of our highlights. We can come back in and touch those up later. But nice, I like that. I think that works better. It's a better mix of colors. Okay, so let me come in and begin to highlight this. I'm using my fan brush with a bit of titanium white, and let's start over on this edge. Pull and turn that over. Almost like you're doing a waterfall, although it's not as sharp of a downward motion. It's more a side diagonal brushstroke. That, and vary the intensity, vary the values. They shouldn't all be bright white, nor should they all be the same shape. This can be brighter. Right here it should be brighter. Make the most sense. And don't kill this dark down the bottom here. Be careful with that. Pull it over, pull pull it over. As we come across here, this should be beginning to level out and be more horizontal here. Here, flatten this out. Okay, that's beginning to look like a wave. Now we need to pick a spot where maybe we're showing how this wave is turning over, and perhaps that's over here. So this goes off, flattens out, and here we'll add an eye to our wave, and that would be a little bit brighter yellow. So I'm going to use that filbert brush that I used earlier. I'm going to dip into some of that cad yellow just to see if I can brighten this up a bit. Again, scrub that in. Not sure if it needed to be that big, but put some blue down in here that we can pull up into that eye to give the feeling of that wave turning, gently turning over. It should be not too much of an angle. Something like that. Blue again down in here where it should be darker. Blue. You can add in some mountain mix color. That's the Bob Ross mountain mix, which is a nice color. This can get scrubbed a little bit to be soft and show a nice gradual change. Maybe we can add a bit of blue in through here just to darken this in some spots. That will show more depth, and this is just straight blue. I did have some mountain mix on my brush, but for the most part I'm just picking up some straight blue and scrubbing some of that in. I went too far there. Some dark over back here, darker blue, maybe that's very dark over there. Nice. So you can see that wave moving in and turning over. Let's go back in here, pull this white back in. So this edge here, since it's turning over, should have a little bit of a splash on it. And for that, I use just a corner of this fan brush and gently push up that and give a little splash to that. And see how that's turning over. Tap that, soften it. Where this is turning over, this should be this foam. Should be a little bit thicker right in through here, and then thin out as it moves across. So this should be a little bit more narrow or thinner line across with that. Looks good. This should be brighter here, and you could pull some of that edge down this so it shows that wall of the wave. Shows that wave coming up, that wall. Pretty. I think that's pretty. So I'm going to fill in a little bit of paint here just to brighten this up and start to show the wetness of what would be sand here in the foreground. And again, leave some dark in between. That contrast is always good to remember. And if you want more blue in this water and sand area, you can lay that in even now. If you're looking at that and you're saying, I want that brighter, I want that more yellow, or I want more blue. Here's some blue on the filbert brush. You could scrub a little bit of that blue in there. Let's continue with some of this white. So as this turns over, there'll be varying degrees. Maybe this up here, a bit of a splash to it, that, and pull that over. Show that movement, just like that. Light touch. This is titanium white with a little bit of liquid white in it. Soften it down, flows easier. Foam along this edge. Put some foam in here, but I will brush it out to brighten up this area and make this look like the water's moving. You know, as this crashes in, water is moving in. And I could just very lightly blend a bit of this foam here and there, and to soften it, take it out of focus, make it a little bit more dreamy. That's pretty. This is throwing me off here, this angle. I think this should be, this angle here should maybe move backwards like this, sort of, again, another swell, and sort of just vanish back there, just dissolve into itself. That's looking nice. So let's brighten the areas that would really require it in through there. And this is being determined by that bright sky right through there, a bit down in here. This is some titanium white with liquid white. Brush this across so this appears to be a nice wet reflection, something like that. Okay, so that's great. There's other things, many other details that we can put into this. You know, this is nice here, but I'm going to shorten this up by adding more foam. So this will taper out. Do this just by scrubbing that in like that. This should be a little bit more narrow, something like that. Again, always keep in mind that contrast. Watch what happens here if I add some bright. This is just liquid white. What that does to that area, it looks like there's some water flowing forward. A bit of highlight back in here. I like that. That's pretty. And I could finish that up with adding a few rocks. This over here, this spray can be softened if you like. Just use a few hairs of the corner of that brush, blend it out. You can also use a clean filbert brush for that. I'm knocking down this very white edge here just a bit. That looks very natural. And using I like this brush. This is a 1/2 inch flat. It's a Bob Ross brush. If I load one side of it with some Van Dyke Brown and a little white on the other side, I'll use some liquid white because that will flow off the brush better because it's so soft. Van Dyke Brown on one side, so there's liquid white on that side and Van Dyke Brown on that side, and the highlight would be the liquid white, the white. So right over here I can put in a couple little rocks. Do that again, and we lost the highlight on this guy. There we go. Just short, flat. Now, right here in Jersey, we don't really see too many rocks on the beach, but there are some places, maybe more out on the west coast. Maybe we have something there. In Jersey, you can paint, what are they called? Horseshoe crabs. We have a lot of horseshoe crabs. That's pretty. I like that. I like that. Let's use a brush. You can use any brush just to pull that bottom down a bit. Blend it in so it doesn't look like these rocks are just hanging on top, floating on top of the water. Okay, we can even use this flat brush to come back in and add some water movement here where it's bouncing, flowing under the rock, below the rock. Soften it. Here I'm just softening it a bit. That's really pretty. I like that a lot. If you want to get fancy, if you want to call it fancy, we can put some foam with just a little white on a palette knife, and then we'll need to use a brush to pull this edge out. Leave that strong white edge, but blend this back edge out. And that should look like foam. Pull this top of this edge out here. That's really pretty. Just going to brush this and soften it just a bit more. Just blend it in and soften it. That's nice. Don't kill those darks. A little bit too much liquid white there, so we could just blend that in. Not sure what's going on back here, but that's bothering me just a bit. Drop in a little highlight there. Maybe that's a bit of a swell. It's these highlights, these very white areas that add depth and dimension. Need some here. You can use a liner brush to take out some of those little marks. Whatever works for you. You can even use your finger. Well, I like this one. I hope you do as well. It's a little bit different than the other Seascape classes that I taught, but this is a pretty composition. Maybe I'll touch it up a bit more, not sure. But for now, I hope you enjoyed it and learned something. Send me a picture. Send me some photos of your painting. Ask some questions if you have any. Just send it to ron@paintwithron.com. And I'd love to take a look at your work. So for now, take care, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.